Hey, this is Chris with Phoenix Gaming, and today we're talking Firefight, and we're going to dig into the Nightstalkers series for episode 3. We're going to look at troops. We're going to look at the different troop units. We're going to talk about each one a little bit and kind of how I think they could be played or what their strengths and weaknesses are. And we're going to wrap it all up with a tier list that ranks all of the troop units. Same announcements as I've been giving. Obviously, I've been working on the Nightstalker series a little bit more because I felt like I fell behind on that. So just keep in mind, all that stuff that's on the screen right now, that's coming to you soon. Last but not least, we're going to do a big shout out to Military Gaming Command. As always, I appreciate everything that they do for the veteran community, so check them out, militarygamingcommand.org. As usual, we're going to start with the order that things go in the companion app. So we're going to start with Shadowhounds. They're 55 points for a unit. They do have the Hunter designation, which gives them access to the Dream Hunter's aura or order. They're elusive 1 with Mind Thirst. And Mind Thirst just gives you a bonus to your nerve stat if you're within 18 inches of an enemy command unit. Then they're stealthy and they're sure-footed. And sure-footed allows you to make hindered charges through unhindered charges through difficult terrain or over obstacles, things like that. Now, they are, like I said, elusive and stealthy, and that would stack with the elusive aura, comes off the shade, and then it could stack with cover and everything else. So you could keep them on the table versus shooting armies a little bit longer because of your ability to stack the elusive and to stack all the -1 to hit penalties. Although armor 3 and 2 hit points means that if something gets through, they're probably going to die. You just have to accept that. And they don't really have charge reactions, so they don't really have any kind of charge deterrent or anything along those lines to help keep them alive if they get stuck out in the open and somebody wants to come whack them. It is 3 models for 55 points, and then each additional is 15 points, and they max out at a squad of 5. But they move 9 and 15, so they're really fast. And again, sure-footed gives you some flexibility on how you can charge them. And they can go to 12-18 from the Dream Hunter. The way I see Shadowhounds, I kind of see them as a late-game unit. You know, you want to hold them back, hide them behind terrain, keep them screened with other units until maybe like your turn 3 or 4. And then they want to come in and hit objectives after your other units have softened up those objectives a little bit. And they want to come play cleanup. The other option is they could be an early game trade piece if your opponent gives you a good target. You don't want to just send them onto an objective and think, haha, this is mine. You want to hold these for probably later in your activation so that you can position them where you need them, so that maybe set them up for the next turn, things like that. Again, don't leave them out. It's wasted points if they die, and it's even more wasted points if they die because you position them poorly. Even with the hit roll mods, again, if I'm playing my Veermen and you're playing Nightstalkers, you're stealthy. That just means I'm going to blaze away with my crawlers. So I'm going to throw like 22 dice at you, and we're going to see what sticks. And the worst case scenario, besides I just completely miss, is that I pin you and don't do any damage. But with 22 dice, I'm going to average 2 to 3 hits. And at armor 3, I'm actually still going to average 2 damage. You know, so it's one of those where even just shooting with my crawlers, if I blaze away, not only do I average lifting a base, but you're also going to get a pin. So it's one of those where you still got to play them smart, which is why I would probably either plan to, if somebody gives me a good kind of juicy target to charge, that I know I can win that assault, like a Bronco or a Mule, something along those lines where I can just kind of get enough damage through weight of dice. I might charge that just to shut off its activation if it hasn't activated, etc. But outside of that, I'm probably going to try to hold these back for a couple turns and then get them where I need them. Maybe I need them to go sprint onto an objective. Maybe I need them to go attack something. But they're not going to live if you just kind of throw them out early. And keep in mind that they're on 40 mil bases, so they're pretty big. So they could potentially be a little tough to maneuver in some situations. But again, I think it's a solid late game cleanup unit. They don't have any AP, and they're unit strength 1. So ultimately, like, they're kind of a weird spot. Next up, we have the Void Ray, and before I dig into that, I just want everybody to know I'm not going to rank the Void Ray, and I'm going to stop ranking the transport troops like the Wolverine APC and stuff like that, because they're not really troops in the strictest sense of the word. You know, they're just troops in that they don't take up any of your slots, but they also usually don't give them. It is 65 points. It has a capacity of 6. It's anti-grav, elusive 1, mind thirst, stealthy, evade. Armor 5, 4 hit points, and honestly, it's basically everything you expect from almost any Night Stalkers unit. It is height 4, so it can hide a little bit easier than, say, your opponent's aircraft. Not that this is an aircraft, but it kind of has that look. It almost fills that role. It's auxiliary, so it doesn't unlock anything. It has a crushing bolt array, which is a 6-die version of the Shadow Bolt. So it's just 6 dice with trademark and blaze away. If you blaze away, you get 7 dice, because remember, you just get 1 additional die for blazing away. Its melee tail attack is 2 dice at AP2 with blast 2 and seismic. And this is kind of a neat profile. It's one of those where if it hits, it could potentially do some damage. And there's going to be times where it probably wins some combats that it probably shouldn't, just because of the blast 2, the AP2, and the seismic. You can upgrade it, and it'll get 3 more melee dice at AP1. It's a 10-point upgrade, and it causes you to lose your transport capacity. So I don't know if that's worth it. It really just depends on what it is you want out of it, I guess. But if I were to run it, I'd probably just keep it as a transport so that I could shuttle a unit into it, and then hopefully I can just get it down the board and, you know, play Kiki's delivery service with this handsome fella. It hits on 6s with its shooting, 5s with its melee. It's one of those where it's kind of weird because, again, height 4 and anti-grav means that it's going to be able to make some charges that you probably don't expect it to make. And it's going to ignore a lot of terrain for charging because anti-grav treats a lot of things as open ground when you're charging, because this doesn't have the vehicle keyword or anything like that. So it's just anti-grav base rules. So it's just kind of wild. It moves 12 or 18, so it's really fast, it's really maneuverable. It's a speedy unit that can be used for alpha strikes or potentially repositioning some of your softer units that need to get into specific areas quickly. So overall, I think it's a solid transport. I don't think it's amazing. It definitely has a role or a function, and you could definitely implement it very effectively in some lists. I think where it's going to struggle is against maybe some of those harder hitting shooting armies that have range. The Forge Father cannon that throws like 8 dice could be kind of a rough one for it. So it's just one of those, know your opponent and understand how to deploy it, things like that. Up next, we have Void Touch Mutants. They have Mind Thirst, Stealthy. They are Armor 5, and so they're like crazy durable compared to some of the other stuff. They do have 1 hit point. They're 65 points for 5, and then each additional is 12 points. You can take a maximum of 10 in the squad. Each model throws 2 melee dice at AP1 with Vicious. Obviously, it's Vicious melee. And they have Elite. The leader throws 4 total dice, so 2 additional dice. A 5-model squad would throw 12 dice, or 22 for a full squad. They hit on 5s in melee, so 4s with a clean charge. And then they have Elite and Vicious with AP1. So they're actually going to be pretty solid melee machines, and they're pretty cheap for what they give you. If you've got 12 dice that are hitting on 4s because of a clean charge, re-rolling 1s, that's pretty good. If you charge 5 enforcers with it, and you can get all your attacks in, even a 5-man's going to throw 12 attacks, and if you're hitting on 4s, you know, that's going to be roughly, what, like I don't remember the math on it, but, you know, 12 dice, you're effectively going to get, what, 8, 9 hits. You get to re-roll 1 die on average. Maybe 2, so maybe you come out with like 9, 10 hits. And again, this is just very rough math. I'm not trying to just calculate it out. And then if you're damaging on 5s, that's half your damage. So if you've got 8, 9 hits, you're going to get 4 through with Vicious, re-rolling a single die. So you can end up killing 2 to 3 bodies with these guys into something like Enforcers. So again, they're pretty efficient for what you're getting out of them. They're just not going to stay on the table for very long, so keep that in mind. You can take Cosmic Fire and Assault Weaponry. Cosmic Fire is 1 The assault weapon is 1 die. Cosmic Fire is 2 dice with It Burns. I've been pretty open about how I think about It Burns, especially on infantry units. Like the base 12-inch, 0 AP, 2 attack flamers. By and large, I don't think they're very matchup specific, but I am coming from a kind of like generalist all-comers tournament perspective. I'm not coming from a, local meta perspective, because I look at this, and had I had a bunch of flamers when I played at Adepticon, rounds 1 and 2, I would have had just like roughshod all over my opponent. Round 3, they would have been worthless because I played against Forge Fathers. And round 4, they'd have been a mixed bag because it was Plague. Some of their units are real good nerfs, some of them aren't. Some of them are really good armor, some of them aren't. So round 4 would have been a mixed bag. But it's one of those where that's how I look at it is, does it benefit me in more matchups than it's a detriment to me? And is it consistent? And to me, It Burns isn't consistent enough and doesn't benefit me enough for me to really lean into it. I'd much rather, like as an Enforcers player, I'll just take Burst Lasers. Sure, they don't activate a unit, but they pin a unit, and it gives me 4 dice. Enforcers hit on 4s anyway. And then with the Rats, they do have some It Burns units that are very cool, because like the Night Terrors have an 18-inch range It Burns, and that's a different story. I see Void Touch Mutants as a very good countercharge unit, and when I say countercharge, I mean like a counter strike. Like you bait your opponent to charge at you, and then you kind of come hit them with the Void Touch Mutants. But you got to have those cheap chaff units to bait those charges out. And sometimes you're not even baiting. Sometimes you're just forcing the inevitable, because your opponent might need to get on an objective, and if you can put maybe a unit of Spectres or Scarecrows on the objective, they have to come to it. And then if they don't, you're getting the points. And then if they do, you keep those Void Touch Mutants nearby so that they can get in there and they can bash those butts. I do think Void Touch units are one of those troops in this army that you could really build around. You could actually probably take that as like the core of your army. Probably do very well because of their damage output and their flexibility. Scarecrows are 65 points, but you get 10 models. They are armor 4 with 1 hit point. They have Horde, which gives you +1 to hit when you have, I think it's 10 or more models in melee. Stealthy, and then Overwhelm, which adds 1 to your unit strength while you have 10 or more models, because they're Overwhelm 10. What that means is with 10 or more models, their unit strength 3, which is pretty good. They are the Nightstalkers equivalent to zombies, but they can control objectives unlike zombies. You get the leader, and then up to 4 other Scarecrows can upgrade their base attack of 1 die and no AP to 2 dice at AP 1. It is 5 points. I don't know that I would waste the points on it, and it might not even be a waste of points, but again, I'm looking at how I would use Scarecrows, and I don't know that I would care about spending 5, 10, 15, 20 points, whatever, to give them a couple of attacks at AP 1. Because I'm looking at these as just a disposable unit. You take 10 to 20 of them, you plant them on an objective, and you just let people charge you. And when they die, you just go, oh well. Or you bubble them up around your own units to block charges and to screen some shooting and give you some cover. And then again, when they die, oh well. The other thing to keep in mind is you're spending all those points for an attack that hits on 6's base. So 5s with Horde, maybe 4s if you charge. So if you're going to play them aggressively and just like try to charge, it might be worth. But that's not the role I would probably have them fill in my army, because there's other units that would do that but better. Each additional Scarecrow is 4 points, and they can take a total of 20, like I said. And it's 105 points for 20 hit points with stealth, which is pretty darn good. Again, because you can just kind of move them, hit the dirt, give them cover, things like that. Stack those hit mods so that you're not just getting shot off the table. So overall, I think they're a great chaff unit that could be used for baiting and trading. That if they die, you're just like, man, sucks. And if you stack your mods right, unless you get charged by something that deletes them in one go, your opponent's going to have to devote a little bit more shooting to them than they may want to. It might force them to steady aim in order to hit you, and that's not the end of the world because now they're not moving. They may have to throw a few extra units at you to shoot you, and that, again, isn't the end of the world because now other things aren't getting shot. So it's just how you want to use them. Up next, we have Spectres, and this is just another cheap chaff unit, and it's really just the same chassis as the Scarecrow, but instead of hitting on 6s, it hits on 7s for assault, and it hits on 6s for its ranged attacks, and it just gets ranged attacks because Scarecrows didn't. It comes with a Shadow Bolt, which is a single die at no AP with Blaze Away and Trademark, so it's going to look a lot like Brawlers, the Shooty Marauder Boys, even Ghouls, just not as good at melee as Ghouls. They do have Suppressive Fire, which will allow them to blaze away as a charge reaction, and that's fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with it if you're presented with a situation to use that. I can't think of a reason where you might want to save that unless you're on an objective. And at that point, you might just go, okay, I'm going to shoot with them, and then I'm going to overwatch with them just so that I can blaze away you when you try to charge them. But for the most part, you're either going to move, shoot, hit the dirt, things like that. And if they don't get their charge reaction, it's not the end of the world. For an additional 5 points per model, up to 2 models can either take the Astral Beam, which is 2 dice at AP3 and anti-tank, a Void Blaster, which is 2 dice at AP1 with Blast, D2, and Trademark, or the Shadow Barrage, which is 3 dice and pinning. If I had to take one of these 3, I would either take the Void Blaster because it's Blast with Trademark, so it still benefits from your Trademark orders, or I'd take the Shadow Barrage because it just has pinning baked in. So yeah, it hits on 6s, but now I don't necessarily feel like I have to continuously spam Blaze Away in order to get those pin dice. And maybe I still want to. And I personally wouldn't take any of them. But I'm saying if I had to, those are what I would take. I would probably, just like with the Scarecrows, keep them very cheap and just plan on blazing away anytime I shoot with them and just like rolling buckets of dice. I do see these, like I've already kind of expressed it, they're kind of like a Crawler's analog. So they have bad shooting. Which means you're probably going to blaze away more than you're going to actually shoot. There's not a lot of situations where you're going to be like, I'm going to steady aim with these. Nah, dog, we're just going to blaze away. We're going to roll a bucket of dice, and we're going to let Jesus take the wheel and see what happens. That would be my approach with Spectres in the situation. They're going to fill a very similar role as Scarecrows in how I would approach them. But honestly, for me, I think I'd take Spectres over Scarecrows because they're not that much more expensive. It's effectively 1 point per model. And sure, they lose Horde and they don't get the Scythe, but they get an 18-inch range attack and you can try to throw pins with it. And that's where I think these would outclass Scarecrows. I don't think either one of them are amazing or trash, but I think this is why I personally would take the Spectres, because again, if I want something that throws melee dice, I can take better units that throw melee dice. And the only reason to me to take Scarecrows over Spectres is that you don't want to spend that extra point per model in order to get the shooting attack. That's, again, just kind of how I look at it. And then last but not least, we have Reapers. These move 7-14. They have the Hunter designation, so they'll get the same benefit that the Shadowhounds get from the Dream Hunter. They're stealthy, they're unflinching, and they have counter charge. So unflinching is going to keep them moving, which is really important in this army. You know, if they have a pin, they can still charge. Sure, they retain their pin, and kind of sucks, but at the same time, they still get to charge. And that's something you may need them to do. You know, it may not matter that they're pinned. You know, if you've got a good target, oh well. Again, if you've got something like a Bronco or a Mule where it's like, I only need 2 or 3 of these to go through to win the assault, shed my pin, and move on with my life, that's it. They are armor 4+ with 2 hit points. Stealth will help a little bit, but you got to keep these homies protected. You can't just throw them out, just like with the Shadowhounds. You plant them out there and think that stealth is going to save your bacon. It's not, because you're going to get players like me who are going to be like, okay, well, I don't need to kill them all. I just need to force nerve checks, and I just need to pin them so that they can't get orders, and so that even if you're charging, you still get that pinning -1 to hit. So I might just blaze away. Or if I've got something like an It Burns weapon, like if I've got Night Terrors, I can It Burns them and just be like, cool, pick them up. And this is an army where It Burns is going to feel really good against it, because this is one of those matchups where it's like, ha ha ha, stealthy, and I'm like, ha ha ha, It Burns, don't care. And this is where I think having a couple is good, but having a lot, not so much. So again, like a Night Terror unit that has one or two of the big flamers, or even taking a couple of the chem spitters on the nightmares might be worth. But overall, it would be nice against Night Stalkers. But if I'm planning my whole game plan around killing Night Stalkers, that does mean that I'm going to be more susceptible to armies like Asterians and Forge Fathers. So again, coming from that kind of tournament comp play perspective, this is why I think it burns are very situational. That being said, it's a 5-model base squad. Each additional is 18 points. You don't get discounts here, which I thought was interesting. Usually you pay a premium for the unit and then each additional model is discounted, right? Not here. 18 times 5 is 90. They are 90 points. 18 points for every additional model. And you don't even get a discount on the 5-point upgrades either. So it's one of those, like, you're paying 90 points. Like, that's it. You're not, no discounts. No incentives to run bigger unit. Doesn't mean you shouldn't, though. Their base loadout is 3 dice at AP1 with Vicious. And for 5 extra points, you get 3 dice at AP2 that also has Elite and Vicious. And man, are those nasty. The Tormentor upgrade is what it is, and they are gross. And the Reapers themselves are gross. Like, that is a great unit. They've got good mobility, unflinching, they hit on 4s, base, and melee. They throw 3 dice each, so they've got a lot of volume. They're a threat to just about anything in the game. And with good order support, you can phase distortion and make them a terror into vehicles and constructs because that gives them seismic. So now that not only do they get extra AP, but they also, if you have heavy armor, they break that heavy armor on 4s, and they already have baked in Vicious. These things are a threat to anything in the game, and that's just the way it is. They are super good. The 5-point upgrade, like I said, very worth it. This is a unit that you place behind another unit. This is why you take Scarecrows or you take Spectres, because both of them are height 2, and you plant them behind your Scarecrows or your Spectres so that they block line of sight to anything shooting at them, or if it's taller like a tank, you'll at least get cover, right? So then you'll have cover and stealthy to try to keep your Reapers alive, things like that. So this is how you protect them, is you screen them with other units so that people can't charge into them so easily, and you just understand that, cool, man, the Spectres, the Scarecrows, they are there to die, and that's okay. And that's one of those things that I think if you play an army like Forge Fathers or you play an army like Enforcers, that might be a mindset that's tough for you to get around, is just understanding that you have units whose only role in your army is to just die so that your other units don't. And I think while you get them into position, you're going to just be looking at a lot of just like move and hit the dirt with both the Reapers and maybe your Scarecrows, things like that, just to kind of stack those -1 modifiers. And just like Hounds, they can be a great early game trade piece if you've got a really good target that your opponent is just planting, but they're also real great for late game cleanup. We're going to talk about, I'm not going to flip you over to TK today. We're going to just talk about it, so ignore the slide there. We are going to talk about the Fourth Wall store. We're going to drop some images of my new t-shirts. We've got the Can't Roll Hot Roll Lots t-shirt, and we've got the I Guess If You Want to Win That Way t-shirt. Those are both live on my Fourth Wall store, and you can click the link in the description to get yours today. All right, we're going to talk about the troops tier list. And before we begin, I think all the Night Stalkers troops are all average at worst. This is the same issue I ran into with the Night Stalkers command units. None of them are bad. And I think when I make a tier list, what happens is people are like, well, you put this in last, that must mean it's bad. No, not at all. It just means that for the way that I play, I don't think it's as good as the other things. And this is going to be the same with this, right? This is going to be the same with the troops. I don't think any of the troops are bad. I think some of them are better than others, but I think they're all good. They all have a role. They're all very playable. They're all very usable. So, I will try to touch on that as I rank them. I will say that this Night Stalkers army seems very well thought out and well balanced internally. So far, everything that I've seen is just like, man, I could see this being a very viable option in a tournament style list. And again, I'm not going to rank the Void Ray. I'm just going to stop ranking those transports in with the troops just because that's not really what they are. They're really just a transport. that gets the troop tag so they don't take a slot. So in last place, or fifth, I'm going to put Scarecrows. And again, it's not that Scarecrows are bad, because they're cheap, they have a function, and they serve that function well. They're a cheap, disposable unit that, if you play them right, can be a little bit harder to kill than people expect, and they can hold objectives. And again, it's not that they're bad, it's just that something has to be the worst. And the fact that they don't really do any damage output, and really they're just there to die, is why I would put them in last. They don't really have a lot of functions. Now again, that doesn't mean you won't look at them and see something different. This is just how I would play them. In fourth, I'm going to put Shadowhounds. And actually, again, Shadowhounds are pretty good. They serve a purpose. They are good late game cleanup. They are fast. They can hit pretty decently. But the downside is that there's other troops that do the exact same thing, albeit for a bit more points, but they also hit a bit harder. So it's one of those where this is one of the few situations I've seen so far where you have a unit and then you have a unit and they basically do the same thing, but one just does it a bit better. And that's, you've got Reapers and you've got Shadowhounds. Now, again, if you've got 55 points in your army and you just need to spend 55 points, by all means, Shadowhounds are a great take. With a solid stat line, you just have to keep them alive and keep them safe and try to overcome that armor 3 up. And another reason I put them so low is that armor 3 up means they require a bit more finesse, and they're not going to be as forgiving as some of the other units might be. In third place, I'm going to put Spectres. And again, it's not that they're good. It's not that they're bad. But they're Scarecrows with ranged attacks. And the ranged attacks can blaze away so they can throw pins. So it basically gives them... It makes them a Swiss Army knife Scarecrow, right? You have more than one function now. You're not just there to die. You can be there to die, but you can also potentially throw some pinning. If you've got a full squad and you blaze away, you're talking about 40 dice. You're talking about averaging 5 hits on a blaze away. That's not terrible. When you're already hitting on 6s, you're going to probably be planning on blazing away most of the time, unless your opponent just doesn't use cover or doesn't hit the deck or doesn't have stealthy. If they just plant something in the open and they just dare you to shoot at it, sure, maybe in that situation. But to me, what I see is I see a unit that's like, all right, just like crawlers, I'm going to plan to blaze away nonstop, hit on 8s, and if I hit, I hit, and if I don't, that's okay. You know, so it's one of those, like, they're a great throwaway unit that can throw the same Scarecrow melee dice, just a little less efficient, but also some range dice, and can throw a pin. And overall, I just don't think there's a single list that wouldn't be made better by at least 1 or 2 units of them, even if they're just min-sized squads. In second, I'm going to put the Void Touched, and the reason I've got the Void Touch in second is because they're deceptively dangerous. You've got some orders you can throw on them that can make them pretty nasty. Again, you could give them Seismic, for example. Things like that. They already have AP. They throw quite a bit of dice. And sure, they're a little slower than Hounds and Reapers, but they're a little cheaper, and they're armor 5, and they still have stealthy, so they've just got a lot of good things going for them. I see this as a unit where you could be like, all right, I only want to run 1 troop unit. This is one of the 2 units I think you could do that with and have a good effective army. You could theoretically do it with Scarecrows and Spectres, but at that point you're just taking the minimum size, I think, in order to unlock other things. Whereas if you were like, hey, I want a good solid troop, I see Void Touched as a good solid troop that you could actually build an army around. And then I think Reapers are number 1, and I don't think it's even close. This is the one standout where I'm like, there is one unit that is clearly better than everything else, and it's Reapers. Now, again, that doesn't mean you don't want these other things in your army. You absolutely want Scarecrows. If all you took were Reapers, you better be real good at this game. And I'm going to touch on that in a minute. I think this is the only unit, like I said, standout. They have great order support. They hit really hard. The upgrade is good for 5 points. They have the Hunter designation, so they can go a little faster. They have counter charge, which makes them a really, really viable charge deterrent. And the unflinching can make it really tough to slow them down. They just have a lot going for them. And I honestly think you could take a list of nothing but Reapers and then a handful of command units, and you would have a good competitive list. But you better be really good at the game, and you better understand how to position your models. Not because, like, haha, they're so good that you can only take them, but because, you know, they're low armor. Sure, they have stealth, but you're not going to be able to just scream. You're not going to have those screening units. Again, I think this is the other troop unit you could take, though, where you're like, I only want to take one troop, and I want to build around that one troop. I think it's Void Touched, and I think it's Reapers, and I think Reapers are just that much better than everything else because of just their mobility and their damage output in melee. I think it's just an excellent unit. In conclusion, I think all the troops are really good, and each one fills its role pretty well. And I think the units are really well thought out with there's not a ton of overlap. They can all hold objectives. They can all benefit from multiple orders. And honestly, I feel like Reapers are the only big standout. But let me know what you think in the comments. And I'll be curious to hear what everybody's thoughts are on this. Thanks a lot. As usual, I want to give a big shout out to my homies, Andrew, Tony, and Daniel, as well as Lord Wellingstone and Dan the Man. I appreciate the support. Everybody have a great day.